My stepmom tried to steal my college fund, accused me of awful things, and got me kicked out. Now the truth about her lies is finally unraveling. About my college fund, I, 18 meters, am in a tough position with my stepmom, Megan, 40F, and I am beginning to doubt everything. Bear with me since this is a long and complex matter. Some background. When I was 10, my parents split. It was an ugly split that, alone and confused for a long period. When I was 14, my dad, 45 meters, remarried Megan. She brought 2 children from her first marriage, Jack, 16 meters, and Emma, 13F, into our household. Though Megan's continuous attempts to push the one big happy family narrative, the change wasn't easy and we have never really felt like a unified family unit. Having kept a 3.8 GPA across high school, I have always been a good student. My ideal is to study engineering in a famous university. For the past 3 years, I have volunteered at the neighborhood animal shelter and competed in multiple robotics club contests. At least until lately, Dad has always been encouraging of my academic aspirations. Dad sat me down for a conversation a few months ago, when I was beginning to apply to colleges. He mentioned a sizable education fund he had been building for me from birth. At most elite colleges, it's sufficient to pay living expenses and tuition. Thrilled, I felt as though my diligence was paying off and my aspirations were within reach. That evening, we spoke about several colleges, debated programs, and made plans for campus visits for hours. That was among the nicest talks I had with Dad in years. The trouble began when Megan learned of the college fund. It was first subdued. One morning, Dad had already departed for work when she cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice came out as laid back, but her remarks had a slant. She said, "You know, I worked my way through college when I was your age, applied for loans and worked part-time. It truly helped me to appreciate money." I tried to dismiss it, telling her I also intended to work a part-time job to help with extra costs. Megan countered, "But you really don't really need to, do you? Not with all that money merely handed to you." Megan's criticisms become more regular and pointed from there. She began bringing up tales of self-made people at meals, always staring pointedly at me. She would discuss her cousin, who paid off her college loans in record speed and is now a successful entrepreneur, or her friend's son, who is working 3 jobs to pay for his engineering degree. Our dinner table started to regularly feature these tales, always followed by remarks about responsibility and the need of hard labor. Dad would nod along, apparently unconcerned about the insinuation that I was somehow less conscientious or diligent for taking his aid. The worst thing is, Megan started controlling Dad. She mentioned to him how handing me the money would cause me to become dependent or hinder me from developing. She keeps urging me, like everyone else, to take out loans or work my way through college. I heard them in their bedroom one evening chatting. "I'm just worried about him, honey," Megan said. "Giving him all that money, do you not believe that could lead to laziness? Perhaps we could discuss paying for tuition simply or cutting the budget to cover living expenses." Dad mentioned something about how he had always intended to assist me with college, which terrified me, but he also said Megan might have a point about the need of working for things. Dad's began to wiggle since then. He is suggesting perhaps cutting the fund or paying just for tuition, but not for living expenses. He seems to have forgotten all we have discussed about my future, all his pledges of support. I tried approaching Mom about this, but she and Dad hardly speak at all. She became irate when I told her over the phone about the circumstances and advised me to defend myself against that woman from pushing me about. Simple enough for her to say she doesn't have to live with Megan, though well-meaning. Mom's guidance doesn't truly assist me negotiate daily conflict at home. Things peaked last week when I heard Megan chatting to Jack in the kitchen. As I was walking to my room, Megan said, "Don't worry about college, honey. I'm trying to get some of your stepbrother's college funds sent toward your future. Given you and Emma won't, it is unfair that he receives such a big payout." What I was hearing defied belief. Megan not only sought to take away my education fund, but also actively sought to donate it to her own children. The unfairness of it caused me to see crimson. I walked straight into the kitchen and approached her without thinking. Megan opened her eyes in astonishment. "Were you listening in?" she inquired, too furious to give her any thought. I ignored her allegation. "You mean you're handling my college fund? Dad has been saving that money for me from my birth." Megan's face grew stiff. "I'm just making sure every child in this family receives fair treatment," she stated. "Jack and Emma won't have the same opportunity. Thus it is not right for you to get such a huge amount." What I was hearing defied belief. "But it's not your money to distribute," I said. "Dad kept that for me long before you even started to show up." Furious, Megan responded, "Watch your tone, young guy. Right now you're quite selfish. Have you given your step-siblings' futures some thought? I thought I was losing it. Egotistical? For wishing to pay for my school with the money my dad saved? How can that make me conceited? Megan opened her arms. A really conscientious adult would see the value of familial fairness. If money worries you, maybe you could look at community college. That would, most definitely, be a more humble, fitting decision. I froze. Her arrogance in suggesting made me furious. Jack only gazed at the floor, obviously uncomfortable, as I looked at him hoping for some support. This is insane. I finally managed to reply. I'm going to bring this up with Dad. Megan grinned and said, go ahead. But keep in mind, your father and I are partners. About what is best for this family, we decide jointly. I bolted from the cooking area. I had to explain what was occurring to Dad, but every time I tried to get him alone since then, Megan has been there, hovering and guiding the conversation. The next several days were strained. Megan behaved as if nothing had happened, but her haughtiness set my wrath boiling. Always with a sharp glance in my direction, she would remark over dinner on the value of money, responsibility, and not giving handouts. Dad looked completely blind to the currents of conflict. He would nod in time with Megan's remarks, sometimes adding his own story on the need of diligence. It seemed as though he had forgotten all our earlier talks on my future and all of his assurances of support. I got more and more alone. Clearly uncomfortable with the circumstances, Jack and Emma avoided me yet were reluctant to challenge their mother. Driven to maximize scholarship possibilities in case of need, I pushed myself into my college applications. One evening, I at last caught Dad alone in his study and said I wanted to chat to him about something. Dad turned from his computer, wrinkled brow. What about, son? I drew in a long breath. Megan has been voicing some opinions on the money distribution. Regarding myself, perhaps not utilizing it at all. We had a plan, I thought. Dad's look was difficult to decipher. He moaned. Your stepmom's raised some reasonable comments on responsibility and the value of working for things, he stated gently. Maybe we offered you the whole amount too quickly. I thought the floor was falling under me. But as Dad promised, I said, I've worked so hard, kept my grades, done everything you asked of me. Dad seemed tense. I know, son, we're proud of you, but Megan thinks, since when Megan gets to decide my future. I stopped. Rage at last breaking through. She is not my mother though. She was not there during those years you were saving for my schooling. Dad's countenance grew stiff. Megan is my wife and a member of this family. She's right, more than your pledge to me. I questioned. The study door opened and Megan came in before Dad could respond. Is everything okay? She inquired. Everything's good, Dad remarked. Our conversation was only on college choices. Megan cracked a smile. Wonderful. I was considering us all sitting down this weekend to investigate some more reasonably priced colleges, maybe with decent work study options. Dad only nodded as I quietly begged him to say anything to defend me. I felt misled and demoralized. Leaving the study, Megan had clearly emerged victorious. My aspirations of enrolling in a university were withering. Some additional points that I believe are relevant. 1. Megan has not worked outside the home since marrying my father. She always talks about the necessity of financial independence, but she is fully dependent on my father's income. When I brought this up once, she became really defensive, claiming that being a stay-at-home mom was the most important profession in the world. 2. When I brought up the unfairness of potentially transferring my education fund to Jack and Emma, Megan says it's about family equality, but she willfully ignores the fact that my father established this fund before she was born. She also ignores the idea that Jack and Emma's biological father is still in the picture and may contribute to their education money. I tried to make a compromise by suggesting that I work part-time while in college to offset some expenditures, but Megan rejected this as not being responsible enough. She seemed to believe that until I am struggling and anxious about money, I am not learning the proper lessons. 4. Dad appears to avoid disagreement and frequently agrees with Megan to keep the peace. I'm concerned that he'll give into her pressure over the college fund. He has always been this way, including when he was married to my mother. I believe this contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. 5. I've pondered contacting my grandparents, Dad's parents, about this, but I'm concerned that it may lead to further family strife. They've never been Megan's fans, and I'm afraid that if they get involved, it will just make the issue at home worse. 6. Megan is continually pushing the one big happy family narrative, yet her actions do not reflect her words. She treats Jack and Emma differently than she does me, and it's becoming increasingly clear. For example, she never questions their spending habits or lectured them on financial responsibility. 7. I'm beginning to wonder if Megan is so adamant about me utilizing the college fund because she wants to use it something else, such as a large family vacation, home renovations, or paying for Jack and Emma's education, but I have no proof of this, only a suspicion. 8. Megan has started saying that I should be more appreciative for what she and my father have done for me. She talks about how much they've given to provide me a decent life, but in my opinion, it's my father who has made the sacrifices, not her. 9. I'm beginning to feel like I'm being gaslit. Megan will tell me one thing while we're alone, but then utterly deny it or twist her words when Dad is present. It is making me rethink my own memories. 10. I'm scared that if I push Megan too hard, she'll convince my father to kick me out. I'll be 18 shortly, and I know they won't be legally obligated to support me anymore. I feel as if I'm at a crossroads. If I stand up for myself and insist on using the college fund, I risk jeopardizing my connection with my father and making my home life miserable. If I give in to Megan's demands, I may be giving up on aspirations and setting myself up for a future of financial difficulties. Am I an asshole for wanting to accept my father's college fund? Should I simply suck it up and figure out how to pay for college myself? I feel like I'm losing my mind here, and I could really benefit from some outside perspective. I felt I needed to clarify something regarding the college fund situation. When I mentioned the college fund that my father told me about a few months ago, it wasn't because I felt entitled. This fund surprised me, but it was consistent with my father's support of my academic endeavors throughout high school. Although I was unaware of the exact fund until lately, my father had always promised to sponsor my college tuition if I maintained decent grades. This pledge is why I worked so hard on my studies, maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I understand that I am not automatically entitled to this money, but I am really appreciative of the opportunity it symbolizes. If my father had informed me he couldn't afford to help with college, I would have understood and to pay for it. My dissatisfaction stems not from a sense of entitlement, but from the abrupt change in plans following the fund's disclosure. Update 1. It has been nearly a month since my previous post, and I wish I had better news to report. Things have gotten worse, and I'm writing this from my friend Mike's guest room. I've been kicked out of my house, and my relationship with my father is in shambles. Here's what occurred. Following my last post, the difficulties in our residence worsened. Megan's comments concerning my college fund become increasingly regular and pointed. She'd bring it up whenever possible, usually with a sarcastic remark about how I needed to understand the importance of hard work and independence. Dad remained frustratingly passive, rarely intervening and frequently agreeing with Megan's statements. I tried to keep my head down and concentrate on my college application. I spent the majority of my time in my room, avoiding family meals and public settings as much as possible, but Megan seems to regard this as a personal issue. She began accusing me of being antisocial and ungrateful, stating that I was intentionally withdrawing myself from family activities. The breaking point occurred last weekend. I had finally received an acceptance letter from my dream school, a prestigious engineering program that I had been striving toward for years. In my excitement, I forgot about the ongoing issues and dashed downstairs to inform Dad. Megan was in the kitchen when I found him, but I was too excited to care. Dad's first emotion was one of gladness. For a moment, it felt like old times, as he hugged me and began asking about the program. But Megan cleared her throat, and the atmosphere in the room altered suddenly. She began to complain about financial responsibility. I could not handle it anymore. All of the irritation and fury that had been building up over the previous months spilled out. I addressed Megan about her persistent intervention, attempts to redirect my education finance, and manipulation of my father. I told her she had no right to try to take what my father had been preserving for me since before she was even in the picture. The argument immediately escalated. Megan's face became red with rage as she began yelling about how ungrateful and selfish I was. She accused me of not accepting her as a member of the family and of constantly treating her and her children as outsiders. Dad tried to interfere, but neither of us were listening at the time. In the heat of the moment, I uttered things I regret. I accused her of attempting to take my college savings for her own children. I even mentioned that Mom hadn't worked a day since marrying my father. Despite her incessant lecturing about financial independence, Megan's reaction was explosive. She turned to my father and informed him, through sobs, that she couldn't live like this anymore. She claimed she felt frightened in her own house and that I had been unpleasant and abusive against her for years. Then she dropped the bombshell that changed. Megan said that I had been making unwanted approaches towards her for several months. She said that when we were alone, I had cornered her, made sexual comments, and even attempted to touch her improperly. She pictured herself as a fearful victim who had been too afraid to speak out until now. I was struck into silence. The claim was so absurd and absolutely false that I couldn't even gather words to defend myself. I looked at my father, expecting him to see through the obvious lie, but the instant I saw his expression, I knew he was looking at me with an expression of hatred and despair that I had never seen before. I tried to defend myself and explain that Megan was lying, but Dad would not listen. He appeared to have already made up his mind. In an angry voice, he told me to go to my room while he and Megan decided what to do. I spent the next 3 hours pacing around my room, alternating between anger and astonishment. I couldn't comprehend how my father could believe such a blatant falsehood. I tried to think of methods to defend my innocence, but it was my word versus Megan's, and it was obvious whose side my father had taken. Later that evening, Dad visited my room. His expression was grim, and he couldn't even look me in the eyes while speaking. He stated that he could not have someone who behaved so badly living under his roof. He told me I had till the end of the week to find another somewhere to live. I tried again to argue my point, to persuade him to see reason, but he refused to listen. He just kept saying that he was disappointed in me and he never imagined I could do something like this. Before leaving, he handed me an envelope containing some money to assist me get started. I packed my possessions in a fog, unable to grasp what was going on. Jack and Emma avoided me totally, no doubt having heard some version of Megan's lies. I tried one final time to talk to Dad, to make him see the truth, but Megan was always there, playing the role of the devastated victim. I contacted my mother, explained the circumstances through tears. She was outraged and wanted to confront Dad and Megan right once, but I begged her not to. I was scared it would simply make matters worse, and a part of me still hoped Dad would see sense on his own. Fortunately, my friend Mike came through for me big time. When I explained what had happened, he instantly offered his guest room. His parents are out of town for a few months on a work assignment, so I can stay here without bothering his family. Now I'm trying to adjust to living at Mike's place. He's been so supportive, but I can't stop feeling like a burden. I'm trying to help where I can, cooking meals, doing chores, but it's not the same as having my own space. I've been oscillating between anger and sorrow. How could my father believe such a terrible lie? How could he abandon our relationship, all those years of memories and trust, based solely on Megan's word? And how could Megan accomplish this? I knew she didn't like me, but accusing me of something so heinous, purposely destroying my connection with my father, is an act of cruelty I can't fathom. I considered visiting my grandparents, but I'm concerned about how they'll react to Megan's claims. What if they believe her, too? I couldn't stand to see the same disdain and sadness on their faces. I've also contemplated going to the police to make a report about Megan's bogus claims, but I'm not sure how effective that would be. It's not like she's made these accusations in public or attempted to file charges, and I'm concerned that involving the authorities will further strengthen my father's trust in Megan's falsehoods. My mother offered to let me remain with her, but she lives in another state. Moving there would mean giving up on my dream school in the future I've been striving toward for years, but I'm beginning to question if I have any other options. Megan's lies have damaged everything, and there appears to be nothing I can do about it. My father, the guy who was meant to know me better than anyone else and to have my back no matter what, has decided to think the worst about me without even giving me the opportunity to explain myself. I've been reviewing every conversation I've had with Megan, trying to figure out where this lie came from. Was it merely an opportunistic move when she saw how angry I was during our dispute, or had she been preparing for this for long, waiting for the ideal time to get rid of me forever? Regardless, the level of calculation and brutality involved sickens me. I don't know what will happen to my college fund now. Will Megan offer everything to Jack and Emma? Will my father use it to pay for my dream school, despite the fact that he believes I'm a predator? I've been attempting to figure out my future moves. Mike assisted me in finding a part-time job at a nearby grocery store. It isn't much, but it will let me contribute to household expenditures and save some money for the future. Every time I try to think logically about my predicament, I am overcome by a flood of rage and hurt. I've pondered contacting Megan's ex-husband Jack and Emma's father. Perhaps he has some insight into her conduct, or has dealt with her lies, but I'm frightened of opening the can of worms. The truth of my situation is beginning to sink in. With little cash and no permanent place to reside, I rely on a friend's generosity. The unfairness of it all is almost unbearable. I did everything correctly. I studied diligently, remained out of trouble, and worked hard to achieve my goals, but all of that has been taken away from me in the course of a single weekend because of one person's falsehoods. I'm trying to stay strong and not let this break me. I keep telling myself that the truth will come out someday, that my father will understand what Megan has done and come to me to apologize. But with Each passing day, that dream seems more and more like a juvenile fantasy. I am not sure what my next update will include. For the time being, I'd like to thank everyone who read my original message and responded with advice. I'm sorry I couldn't take action on most of it before everything broke apart. If anyone has been in a similar scenario or has any ideas on proceed from here, I would be really grateful. I feel lost and alone, and any advice would be appreciated. I'll try to post another update as I have more information. Until then, wish me luck. I have a hunch I will need it. Update 2. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous update, and a lot has happened. I'm still residing at Mike's apartment, but there was an unforeseen development that I needed to inform you of. I was at work, refilling grocery store shelves, when I received a call from my grandparents. I nearly didn't answer. I'd been avoiding calls from unfamiliar numbers, scared it was Dad or Megan calling, but something urged me to pick up, and I'm glad I did. When I heard my grandmother's voice, I knew something was wrong. She seemed frightened and bewildered, asking if I was all well and secure. I had no idea what was going on until she indicated that Dad had called and told them some troubling news about why I had left home. I became quite concerned that Megan's falsehoods had expanded beyond simply Dad. I asked my grandma what Dad had told them, and her answer confirmed my darkest suspicions. Dad had told them about Megan's phony claims, presenting me as a predator who was making unwanted advances on my stepmother. I felt terrible. It was bad enough that Dad believed these lies, but now my grandparents do too. I couldn't bear the notion of them gazing at me with hatred and despair, like Dad did last night at home. But as my grandmother continued speaking, I recognized something. My grandparents were doubtful of Megan's charges, unlike Dad, who believed them right away. They knew me and had seen me grow up, and something about this scenario didn't sit well with them. That's why they called, not to condemn me, but to hear my side of the tale. For a while, I considered brushing it off, telling them it was all a mistake and changing the subject. I was so exhausted, defending myself against these nasty lies. But then I realized that this could be my chance to tell the truth and have someone in my family trust me. So I took a deep breath and told them everything. I started from the beginning, outlining the college fund and Megan's growing attempts to intervene. I told them about the arguments and Megan's plans to redirect the money to Jack and Emma. I explained the last argument and how Megan made up these horrible charges as she felt she was losing control of the situation. As I spoke, I could hear my grandparents' reactions shift from astonishment to shock to fury. They offered questions to clarify ideas, but they largely just listened. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then my grandfather spoke, his voice harsh with controlled rage. He stated they believed me and knew I would never do the things Megan accused me of. He questioned why I hadn't come to them sooner, and I said that I was worried they wouldn't believe me, that they'd side with Dad like he had with Megan. My grandma told me that they would always be side, and that they were sorry I had been going through everything alone. Then she said something that made me freeze. They were going to talk to Dad. I panicked a little, afraid that confronting Dad would just make matters worse. But my grandparents insisted. They stated that they could not stand by and let their son ruin his relationship with his child over a falsehood. They promised to call me back once they'd spoken with him. The following few hours were terrible. I couldn't concentrate on work. What if Dad doesn't listen to them? What if this only made him angry, reinforcing his belief in Megan's lies? Or worse, what if my grandparents changed their views after speaking with him, believing Megan was telling the truth after all? My phone finally rang again, and I answered it. My grandfather's voice was solemn as he described what had occurred. They contacted Dad and confronted him with what I had told them. Dad tried to defend Megan at first, but they wouldn't allow him to get away with it. They demanded to know how he could believe such dreadful things about his own son, and how he could toss me away without even attempting to investigate. Apparently, the conversation became heated. My grandfather stated that for the first time in years he had raised his voice at his son. He warned Dad that he was making a terrible mistake, that Megan was manipulating him, and that he risked losing his relationship with me forever. Then my grandfather dropped a bombshell. He informed Dad that if he didn't fix the situation, if he didn't at least try to listen to me and find out the truth, they would change all of their assets, including the inheritance Dad had always imagined would be his one day, would be transferred to me instead. I was stunned. I'd never considered my grandparents' inheritance, let alone how it may affect my future. To learn that they were willing to use it as leverage to persuade Dad to see reason was staggering. My grandmother then picked up the phone. She told me that they were completely behind me and would do anything to help me get through this. They offered to let me stay with them and help me figure out situation. They even promised to pay a lawyer if necessary to protect me from Megan's additional bogus charges. I was beyond grateful, but yet afraid. This seemed to be getting out of control, becoming more than just a family fight. I asked them how Dad had reacted to their ultimatum. My grandfather stated that Dad was frightened into silence at first, then became angry. He accused them of taking sides without understanding the whole facts and of attempting to blackmail him. Dad ended the call by hanging up on them. We're currently in a waiting game. My grandparents have given Dad a week to contact me in an attempt to hear my side of the story. If he doesn't, they say they'll carry out their threat about the inheritance. Part of me hopes that this will be the wake-up call Dad needs, prompting him to examine Megan's story and recall who I truly am. But another part of me is scared that this would only exacerbate our differences, that Dad will interpret this as me turning his folks against him. My living situation with Mike is still fine, but I know I won't be able to stay here forever. His parents will return in a few weeks, and while they may understand the situation, I cannot impose it on them. My grandparents' offer to let me remain with them is intriguing, but they live in a different state. I'm still working at the grocery store to earn money for college, but it's little compared to what I'll need. I've looked at scholarships and loans, but without access to my college fund, the numbers simply don't line up. The idea of giving up on my preferred school, settling for a cheaper option, or deferring college entirely is upsetting. I've also been dealing with the emotional consequences of all this. Some days, I can barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the injustice of it all. Other days, I'm enraged, ready to confront Dad and Megan and push them to accept the truth. Mike's been fantastic, listening when I need to scream and giving me space when I need to be alone, but I know this scenario is also worrying him out. My mother has been phoning on a daily basis, offering to let me come and stay with her. I appreciate her support, but I can't leave. Furthermore, a small petty part of me does not want to give Dad and Megan the joy of driving me away totally. So now I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see if Dad will reach out and be willing to hear the truth. I'll try to post another update as I have more information. Until then, wish me luck. I have a feeling I will need it. Update 3. It has been 3 months since my last update, and the issue has drastically escalated. I'm still absorbing everything that has happened, but I'll attempt to explain it as simply as possible. Brace yourselves, for this will be a lengthy one. I received a call from my father about a month after my grandparents issued an ultimatum to him. His voice trembled, and he sounded like he had been crying. He asked if we could meet in person because he wanted to tell me something important. I was nervous, but I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When I saw him, I hardly recognized him. He appeared to have years in just a few months, with dark circles beneath his eyes and a disappointed stoop in his shoulders. As soon as we sat down, he burst into tears and begged for my forgiveness. He said that he had found the truth behind Megan's falsehoods. Apparently, she had been cheating on him with her ex-husband, Jack, and Emma's father for several months. Not only that, but she was pregnant, and the timing indicated that the baby couldn't be my father's. Dad overheard Megan on the phone with her ex, discussing their future plans. He didn't get the complete picture from that single talk, but it was enough to raise his suspicions. He began paying more attention, seeing contradictions in Megan's stories and actions. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Dad arrived home early one day and discovered Megan and her ex in a compromising position. When challenged, Megan did not instantly reveal everything. Instead, she attempted to deceive Dad, claiming that he was hallucinating and that her ex was only there to talk about something concerning the children. But Dad wasn't buying it anymore. He wanted the truth, and what he discovered was far worse than he had anticipated. Megan and her ex had reconciled a few months earlier, allegedly over difficulties with Jack and Emma. One thing led to another, and they began an affair. However, as the truth developed, it became evident that Megan's dishonesty extended beyond the affair. She stated that she had been dissatisfied in the marriage for some time, feeling as if she had rushed into it without properly moving on her previous relationship. Instead of dealing with these concerns honestly, she tried to exploit the situation to her benefit. Megan admitted that she viewed Dad's college fund for me as a danger to her financial stability. She didn't have direct access to it, but she had been gently encouraging Dad to consider utilizing the money for other things, such as home renovations or family holidays. Her strategy was to progressively drain the fund while protecting her own financial position. The bogus accusations against me were part of the plan. Megan attempted to downplay her role in it, claiming that she had felt uncomfortable around me at times, but admitting to exaggerating and distorting incidents to cast me in a negative light. Her purpose was to create space between Dad and me so that I wouldn't interfere with her plans. When Dad confronted Megan with all of this, she did not even have the decency to seem embarrassed. Instead, She tried to create a fresh falsehood, alleging that her ex had misled her, and that she was also a victim. She cried, and claimed she made a mistake, but she still loved Dad. But the play broke apart when her ex, enraged at being thrown under the bus, revealed Dad text messages and emails confirming Megan's willing participation in the affair and manipulation. Some of the conversations contained details about their future intentions, such as how they would manage the divorce and share assets. The cruelty of it all was overwhelming. Megan had not only abused Dad's confidence through the affair, but she had also deliberately worked to destroy his with me and ensure her own financial future at our expense. She'd exploited Dad's fears and desire to make his new marriage succeed, all while planning her exit strategy. Dad was a disaster, as he told me everything. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness but hoped that one day I would be able to trust him again. He informed me that he was filing for divorce immediately and would do all in his ability to make things right. The divorce process has been a nightmare. Megan, recognizing her scheme is now attempting to collect as much as she can before the divorce is official. She claims she is entitled to half of everything, including the house and her father's retirement money. Dad filed for divorce as soon as he learned about Megan's infidelity, but the legal process takes time. We've gone through numerous preliminary hearings and failed mediation attempts. Our lawyer estimates that it will be another 6 months to a year before everything is finished. Fortunately, the evidence of her behavior is working in Dad's favor. In our state, while infidelity does not immediately prevent a spouse from getting alimony, it is considered when spousal support is determined. The judge has been unimpressed by Megan's assertions, especially considering the existence of those damaging text messages and emails. Megan's pregnancy has complicated things. She's attempting to use it as leverage, implying that the baby could be Dad's after all, and that he should not abandon his child. However, considering the timing of her affair and Dad's proof, it's extremely unlikely that the baby is his. Dad's lawyer has urged him to obtain a paternity test once the baby is delivered, but Megan can't use the pregnancy to her advantage right now. Megan could not directly access my college fund, but she had been asking Dad to take money for other family expenses. Dad, eager to keep the peace and believing Megan's falsehoods of me not worthy of the money, had agreed several times before. He pledged to replace every dime, even if it meant working 2 jobs. The most annoying element is Megan's continued attempt to manipulate everyone around her. She informs Jack and Emma that Dad is attempting to steal her baby, that he is abusive, and that they must testify against him in the divorce process. She's contacted family members, telling them about how she was misunderstood as a wife who made a mistake but deserves another opportunity. She even had the guts to contact me and cry, claiming that she never intended for things to escalate and that she was simply terrified and bewildered. She tried to persuade me that if I told Dad I forgave her, maybe we could all be a family again. The manipulation was so clear that it was almost funny, but it still left me sick to my stomach. Jack and Emma are stuck in the middle of a nightmare. They'd been spending more time with their dad recently, unaware that their parents were rekindling their love behind my father's back. When everything was revealed, they were devastated. They've contacted me and Dad, apologizing for not standing up for me, and saying that Megan had also supplied them false information about me. Megan had informed them that I was jealous of them and attempting to undermine their relationship with Dad. She had convinced them that I was unstable and potentially aggressive, which is why they avoided me in the last 3 weeks before I went. Learning the truth has been devastating for them, and they are still trying to accept who their mother truly is. Dad has attempted to make apologies in every way he can think of. He has contacted my grandparents, thanking them for their support and apologizing for not listening sooner. He has volunteered to pay for therapy for me, understanding the emotional stress produced by this entire situation. He's even trying to make amends with my mother, admitting that his terrible decisions have placed an unfair burden on her. I'm still trying to digest everything. Part of me is relieved that the truth is out, that I've been vindicated, and that my father now believes me. But another part of me feels angry, mad that it took this level of betrayal for him to realize the truth, angry that I had to go through months of suffering and uncertainty because he couldn't trust his own kid over a lady he'd only known for a few years. For the time being, I've returned home and settled back into my old room. It is weird to come back here, knowing everything that has transpired. Dad and I are walking on eggshells around each other, unsure how to repair our connection. We're going to begin family therapy shortly, hoping to work through some of the hurt and mistrust that has built up. My college plans are back on track. Dad has pledged to do whatever it takes to me into my ideal school, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. My grandparents have been extremely supportive, offering both emotional and financial assistance whenever needed. The legal battles are not done. Megan is battling tooth and claw for every dime she can obtain, prolonging the divorce procedures with unrelenting demands and allegations. Her counsel has attempted to portray her as a caring wife and stepmother who made a single mistake, but proof of her deceptive behavior is jeopardizing her case. Dad's lawyer has been advocating for a fair yet strong settlement. Megan's infidelity and intentional deception make it unlikely that she would receive the wealth she was hoping for. The judge seemed ready to award her merely the bare minimum necessary by law, which is a minor triumph. In this disaster, there's also the issue of possible criminal charges. Megan's activities, according to the lawyer, may be considered fraud due to the extent of financial manipulation. It's a complicated legal matter, and Dad is still debating whether he wants to pursue it or just finish the divorce and go on with our lives. Megan's ex isn't getting off easily either. His involvement in the affair and subsequent manipulation has been revealed, and he is now facing legal consequences. His present wife, yes, he was married the entire time, has filed for divorce, and his firm is considering dismissing him as a result of the incident. It's a minor consolation, but it feels like some kind of justice. As I sit here, writing this update, I am struck by how swiftly and completely one person's falsehoods can devastate numerous lives. Megan walked away from the disaster she caused without looking back, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. It will be a long road to recovery for all of us. I have no idea what the future holds, but for the first time in months I feel like I can breathe again. The truth is out, my name has been cleared, and I have my father back. Even though our relationship is tenuous right now, it is more than I could have hoped for during those dark days when I felt I had lost everything. Thank you to everyone who has followed my tale and offered their support. Your warm thoughts and wisdom have been a lifeline through this ordeal. I'll publish another update if something big happens, but for now, I'm concentrating on recovering and moving forward. Wish us luck. After everything that's transpired, I believe we'll need it.